Hey there, Olagerinos. It's John Teti back again to talk about Better Call Saul, and I'm joined this week by Inky. Hi, Inky, the Pac-Man ghost. Inky is the perfect co-host. He never complains, and he always looks interested in what I'm saying, as long as I sit on this side of the couch. So join me as I have another Basement Breakdown. Okay, Basement Breakdown, Season 4, Episode 4 of Better Call Saul. Talk. Here's what I want to talk about, my shot of the show, but I need to set it up, okay? The shot of the show for me is this last shot we get of Jimmy looking at the CC Mobile store after he's painted his new advertising slogan on the windows, but there's so much that leads up to this shot. It's so beautifully constructed in true Better Call Saul fashion. I want to go back to closer to the beginning of the episode and look at Jimmy in the CC Mobile store. And we start out early on with this shot of him looking at himself in these panes of glass of the display case, and they've lined it up perfectly. So you see Jimmy looking glum. He's got his neon green vest on, which to me is almost like a send-up of the season 2 montage, a really pivotal montage of Jimmy with the rainbow shirts on the rack. Now he has the bright colors, but it's this dumb vest that just makes him look dumpy and unexciting. And he's looking at himself in these panes of glass, and the way that the light is refracted, not only is he looking at his own reflection, but then there's another reflection of Jimmy behind him that seems to be looking over Jimmy's own shoulder in despair at where he's ended up and trying to make something of himself, right? And it also introduces this idea of copies of Jimmy, which the name CC Mobile, the name of the store where he works, CC means carbon copy, right? Got me thinking about how much copying has been a part of Jimmy's journey on Better Call Saul. We have CC Mobile, thinking about a few episodes ago when he interviewed at the copier store and extolled the virtues of copiers. And of course, Chuck's whole downfall was fueled by Jimmy's decision to make slightly altered copies of those documents, right, for the Mesa Verde business. Slightly altered copies. And CC, I just started thinking about, a carbon copy is made traditionally through carbon paper on a typewriter, right? Nobody does this anymore, but that's where the term comes from. And every time you make a carbon copy, the quality degrades a little bit. So I'm thinking about how Jimmy's making copies of himself, and maybe he's starting to feel that every time he makes a copy, the quality of Jimmy degrades a little bit. Okay, what else do we see in the CC Mobile montage? A lot of blue and green. Keep that in mind. I'm going to come back to that. They even have this sort of medium close-up of all the, it looks like racquetballs in the rack, and the shot is just bursting with blue and green. And we also have rainbows on the wall. How sad are these rainbow hot air balloons just tucked away in a little corner of the shot here, of the wide shot? It almost seems like they're cruelly taunting Jimmy with, this is what has come of his rainbow dreams. It's just these flat, hot air balloons on the wall of his purgatory, which is what this CC Mobile montage feels like to me. This is not the Jimmy we want to see. It's not the Jimmy he wants to be, which brings us to his exchange with Ira later in the episode. Strikingly set up. We see them through these two window doors. It sets these two guys up almost as mirror images of each other. And that's how the dynamic of the scene is going. They're both into the Hummel game. It's a scene about honor among thieves because Ira is giving Jimmy his larger than expected share. Jimmy even says, hey, you didn't have to give all this to me, but they're in it together. And the shot also has the feel of Jimmy living in a very small world. And that's what it feels like here too, doesn't it? Like Hummel figurines, they're so tiny, they're so insignificant. And this is where Jimmy's shits and giggles are going to come from now? Really? It just seems like such a tiny box that he's tucked himself into. It's too tiny a box for Jimmy to really get his kicks.
I'll find something. Sounds good.
So then at the end of the scene, Ira tells him, call the vet if you want to get in touch with me. New job, new phone.
You never know who's listening.
You never know who's listening. Okay? And then Jimmy lights up. It's Jimmy's not in it for the Hummel figurines. That is not going to sustain him. But Ira gives him a narrative that speaks to Jimmy's anti-establishment, anti-authority soul, right? And we see him plaster his narrative on the windows of the CC Mobile store. Is the man listening? Privacy here. We talk about colors a lot on Better Call Saul, right? Get out your color wheel. CC Mobile, the words CC are in blue and green. And what colors does Jimmy use to paint this sign on the windows? Red and orange. On your color wheel, red is going to be opposite green. They're contrasting colors. Orange is going to be opposite blue on your color wheel. He couldn't have picked colors that more vividly contrast with CC. And yet, he's selling CC Mobile, isn't it? I mean, it just perfectly embodies how Jimmy will find a way to run against the grain and yet find some legitimate success in it, right? That's what we know of Saul Goodman. He's a legitimate lawyer, basically, but he also is anti-authority, and he's all about personal freedom and, yes, down with the man. So this is a moment where we see the pieces of the Saul Goodman story falling into place. And we see it's just another step towards Saul, and it's another glimpse into the soul of Jimmy. And what I love about this last shot we see of Jimmy is how it contrasts with that earlier shot of him seen through the windows of the shop doors. So small, so constrained, it seems like there's no potential there. And then we end, after he's painted this sign, after he's found his new narrative, we end with him gazing off into the great beyond. The sky seems so vast in this shot from down low. The clouds are moving. Mobile, Jimmy's moving again. And the expanse. I just love the contrast of the expanse with those small door windows. I think that tells the story right there, sort of launching Jimmy, I think, into a new chapter. He's back. That's Jimmy. That's my shot of the show. Let's talk about Mike, and let's talk about cement. Two super exciting topics. So we have this strange cold open where we see this flashback to Mike's son, Matty, writing his name in cement. And then we have this hit of Mike saying, "You wanted me to talk? I talked." So let's take this apart a little bit, right? Why cement? It brought me back to season 3, episode 7. Last time we saw a square of cement, the episode title was Expenses. And Mike's building a playground. And he shows Anita how to use a broom to create a texture in some wet cement that was just poured. And he says it creates a texture that makes it safe for the kids, which is really evocative, I think, of what Mike tried to do and couldn't do for his son. He tried to make the world safe for his son, but he couldn't do it. And now he's trying again to make it safe for his granddaughter and for his daughter-in-law to some extent. That's what I got out of that scene at the time. And yet, I'll tell you, a week ago, I was thinking about that scene again and that picture of that broom going over the cement. And it occurred to me that also what happens when you create that texture is it obscures any flaws that might have been there, any pockmarks in the cement. It smooths it over. And I thought, you know, that's kind of what Mike has been trying to do as well. He's trying to smooth over the roughness of his past. And then I get this image to begin this week's episode. I couldn't believe it. Maddie writing his name in the cement. Now think about that in the context of the story that Stacy tells at group, all right? She talks about how she went for a few hours without thinking about Maddie, and she worries out loud that she's going to forget about him altogether, that he'll be wiped from her memory somehow. And she sort of laughs it off and moves on and recognizes it as progress, I think, but Mike is really torn up by this. Think about Maddie writing his name in the cement, and then later in Mike's life, that broom going over the cement and wiping that clean, okay? And this is what Mike is feeling in that moment. He's feeling that he is forgetting Maddie, maybe not forgetting him, but betraying him by continuing to exist on the lawless side of society and making the excuse that, hey, he's doing it for his kids. He's doing it just to get by. What was that phrase from 5-0 in the first season? You go along to get along. That's still what he's doing, basically, right? And I think in this moment, we see how torn up he is by the notion that he's betraying Maddie by living the life he's living right now. And it's why when, what was the guy's name? Henry? Poor Henry. When poor Henry pipes up with another one of his lies and says that he knows how Stacy feels and basically how Mike feels, even though that goes unspoken, it's the lie that Mike just cannot tolerate, and it leads to the meltdown that we see.
Tell me I'll find her obituary.
That's what I wanted to talk about this week. But hey, what do you want to talk about? You've got ideas of your own, and maybe you think my ideas are horseshit. That's fine, as long as you're nice about it. In the comments, I cannot see everything on my own, so let's talk about it together and let's see more in what I think was a great episode of Better Call Saul. We will, of course, be back next week on Labor Day. Not on Labor Day, I guess, a few days after Labor Day. It takes us some time to put this together to talk about Season 4, Episode 5 of the show. It's been a lot of fun. Let's keep it rolling. I'll be back here with another Basement Breakdown soon. So long for now.